In this video, we are going to talk about the analog horror series Dexter the Dog. This is a series that tells the story of a strange entity coming from another dimension entirely, taking the outward appearance and face of a dog. However, it becomes clear later on that this is something completely different and something far more dangerous than just a regular dog. But before we get started with the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And now, let's dive right into the video. The first video is titled Experiment Number 0002. The first video begins by displaying the official logo of the CICA organization. This is a deeply mysterious research organization that is actively working on a secretive project that we are about to learn about right now. The ultimate goal of this project is to achieve travel between different dimensions or parallel universes, as well as attempting to achieve actual time travel. After that, a technical description is displayed explaining the testing and the experiment that was conducted for the specific purpose of dimensional travel. We learn that this project is called Experiment Number 0002. This experiment consisted of opening an actual gateway or a portal between our own dimension and another random parallel dimension. Humans knew absolutely nothing about this world, and that included the very scientists who were conducting the experiment. After opening this dimensional gateway, a strange creature appeared on the other side of the portal. This creature was a humanoid, but at the very same time, it bore a striking resemblance to a dog, and it is referred to in the documents as Dexter. I will tell you exactly why they named it with this specific name at the very end of the video. This strange entity, or Dexter the Dog, was actively preventing the scientists from stepping inside the gateway. Therefore, the scientists decided to attempt to study the behavioral patterns of this creature, Dexter, in order to get to know it better and try to comprehend the true nature of the creatures existing inside that gateway. However, at the very same time, they had to be extremely cautious to ensure that Dexter would not escape from the gateway and enter into our own human dimension. After that, a visual image of the gateway itself is shown on the screen. It looks like a mirror surrounded by an old frame, and we don't know its exact function or purpose yet. It is surrounded by a heavy metal frame, and the text states that it is built for protection. Though we still don't know how this metal frame is supposed to protect them or what kind of danger it is guarding against. Anyway, we then move to the very first test conducted to open the portal. We hear one of the lead researchers speaking in Spanish, and he is explaining to us that they are currently about to open the gateway to the new dimension. This is the dimension where the strange entity named Dexter resides. Right after that, the gateway is successfully activated and opened. As soon as the portal opens up to the new dimension, we can clearly see that Dexter is already standing on the other side of the gateway, looking as if he was just waiting there for the portal to be opened for him. We then begin to witness a conversation taking place between Dexter and the doctor or the researcher who was attempting to study Dexter's nature. The researcher asks Dexter how he's feeling right now. Dexter responds to him and says that he is completely amazed and astonished. This was incredibly obvious just by looking closely at his physical facial features. The researcher then asks him about the reason behind his astonishment, but Dexter does not give an answer. The researcher tells Dexter to not worry at all, reassuring him that the test will not take long. After that, the researcher asks him if he is feeling any hunger. Dexter answers him back and says that he indeed is very hungry. At that moment, the researcher tries to tell a joke to Dexter to lighten the mood, but honestly, I did not understand the joke at all, and it was clear that Dexter did not understand it either. After that, the researcher apologizes to Dexter and admits that it was a silly joke, but Dexter did not even comprehend what a joke meant in the first place or what it meant to joke around with someone. The researcher tries to explain to Dexter that joking or humor is something that happens naturally between friends. Right then, Dexter asks the researcher if they are considered friends. Of course, the researcher answers Dexter immediately and tells him that he does indeed consider him a friend. Next, the researcher transitions to another topic and asks Dexter if he possesses any real emotions. However, Dexter's response was quite bizarre because he tells the researcher that he feels hunger. The researcher clarifies to him that hunger is not the kind of emotion he is talking about and asks him if he experiences feelings like joy, sadness, or physical pain. Dexter actually responds and says that he has felt pain before, and he explains that the feeling of pain is something entirely different for him. The strange part is that Dexter explains that he actually loves feeling pain. Suddenly, he begins to behave in a terrifyingly erratic way. Dexter completely breaks his own jaw with his own hands just so he can experience the sensation of pain. Because, as we just mentioned, Dexter loves to feel pain. Right after that, the scene abruptly cuts. When we return to the screen once again, we see that the mirror, which is the gateway, is completely shattered. This could strongly mean that Dexter has escaped or broken through the gateway. But up to this point in the video, it is not completely certain. At the very end of the video, a message in Morse code appears on the screen. The translation of this code says, "CICA, we need help. Experiment 0002 has escaped." Of course, the entity meant by Experiment 0002 is Dexter himself. It is completely obvious that this Morse code message was a desperate distress signal sent out to the CICA organization. Now let's move on to the next video. The second video is titled, "This Thing Is Not a Dog." The video begins with the exact same scene of the shattered mirror from the previous video. After that, we transition to an official report issued by the CICA organization, and it is clear that this internal report was sent directly to the employees working within the organization. The report explicitly stated that the Gateway experiment has been completely cancelled and terminated and will not be resumed under any circumstances. It will be permanently locked away and kept in the archives. The report strictly emphasizes that no questions regarding this project will be answered at all, and it strictly orders all employees not to disclose or reveal any piece of information to any outside person. The report also claims that the Gateway has been completely sealed and shut down, and that Subject 0002, or Dexter, is entirely inside the Gateway and never broke out of it. This completely contradicts what appeared in the previous video, where we logically concluded that Dexter had actually broken out of the portal and was now inside the human dimension. However, the official report completely denies this fact, and even goes on to claim that Dexter is not considered a dangerous entity. However, it is very obvious that the organization, through this report, was desperately trying to cover up whatever terrible thing happened in this project, asserting that Dexter is not considered a dangerous entity. However, it is clear that this report was mostly a lie and that they are covering up something extremely hazardous. The very next scene completely confirms this suspicion, as we see blood splatters and traces everywhere across the facility, and we also catch a glimpse of Dexter hiding inside one of the dark rooms. After that, the camera shifts to one of the surviving researchers, and it is completely clear from his voice and words that he is terrified out of his mind. He is frantically trying to escape from something. Of course, we can easily deduce that the thing this researcher is trying to run away from is Dexter. We learn from the researcher's frantic whispers that he has been hiding inside this small room for almost 2 hours now. He begins to deeply blame himself for ever participating in this project in the first place. After that, he decides to leave the room he is currently in to try and find another area that might be safer for him. He expresses a deep fear that Dexter might be able to smell his scent, which would easily reveal his hiding spot. This is a highly logical thought, because Dexter looks like a dog, and dogs naturally possess an incredibly powerful sense of smell. Indeed, the researcher moves out and manages to reach the records room. Here, we learn from his words that he is the absolute last survivor alive in the facility, and that all the other researchers who were working with him on this project have been entirely eaten by Dexter. But suddenly, he hears a strange, unsettling sound coming from right behind him. Dexter has successfully found the researcher's location. The researcher panics and tries to escape from him by any means necessary. Luckily for the researcher, he finally manages to reach the exit door. As we saw, the researcher reached a door with the word exit written on it in Spanish. However, the moment he steps through that door, he finds himself right back inside the room where the mirror gateway is. At the very same time, Dexter was actively hunting and chasing him. The researcher suddenly realizes that stepping through the gateway is his only remaining path to escape and survive. At the very end of the video, a new report is shown, stating that the gateway experiment was a massive success, and that a person has successfully entered inside the gateway, and that creature 0002 is completely non-hostile, and in the end, it explains everything. The new dimension that was discovered is considered completely unknown to the organization by about 95%. This means they practically know absolutely nothing about it, except for very minimal details. However, at the very same time, they firmly believe that it could be a mirror replica or an identical copy of the real living dimension. Now, let's take a close look at the video description. We will actually find some additional pieces of information inside it. The description explicitly states that the test was a massive success, and it firmly reassures everyone that Dexter is still entirely present inside the gateway and never broke out of it. Furthermore, the CICA organization completely denies any legal responsibility for any damages or harm that occurred during the execution of this experiment. Right after that, we discover that the true underlying reason behind canceling the entire experiment was a severe lack of financial support and funding from the government. This perfectly explains why the organization was desperately trying so hard to convince the government to fund the project, and also to persuade the researchers themselves that the project was perfectly safe and that there was absolutely no danger in participating in it. Following this, we learned the exact name of the specific researcher who was sent directly into the gateway, the very same one we just saw in the previous footage when Dexter was actively hunting him down. This researcher's name was Valentin Gonzalez. What we understand from this video is that the organization sent an official report to the employees, which naturally included Valentin, in order to inform them of three specific things. First, that the Gateway project has been completely closed and terminated. Second, that Dexter never exited or broke out of the Gateway. Third, that Dexter is absolutely not a dangerous or hostile creature. However, right after that, we discover that this entire official report was merely a massive lie. The true purpose behind it was to completely deceive the employees, who were ultimately sacrificed for the sole purpose of allowing the organization to gather more data and learn more details about Dexter, as well as to force one of the researchers to step into the Gateway. And indeed, this is exactly what happened to Valentin. They completely deceived him by claiming that Dexter was the one who was going to break out, but after he stepped inside, he shockingly discovered that Dexter was actually entering the Gateway right behind him. Thus, Valentin was fully forced and driven into the Gateway. In a desperate final attempt by Valentin to escape from Dexter, he ran through the portal, and it is entirely clear that this whole scenario was meticulously planned by the organization from the very start. Consequently, the organization fully succeeded in getting Valentin into the portal, or rather, forcing him to step inside. Let us break down this situation to make it even easier to understand. Dexter broke out of the Gateway and became entirely present inside the laboratory along with the rest of the researchers who were actively working on the project. At this point, the organization might have intentionally locked these employees who were working on the project inside inside the laboratory with Dexter, making the gateway portal the absolute only exit route out of the entire laboratory. They did this so that if one of the employees managed to survive and sought an escape route, they would be completely forced to enter through the gateway as a final desperate attempt to flee from Dexter. And indeed, Valentin was the absolute only survivor who managed to find an exit route. Or at least, that was the idea. However, it became glaringly obvious that the only available path was the gateway itself. By doing this, the organization completely succeeded in driving one of the researchers straight into the gateway. Currently, Valentin has fully transitioned into the fake dimension, which is the newly discovered parallel dimension from which Dexter initially emerged. Now, let's move on to the third video. But of course, before we transition to the very next video, it is absolutely necessary that you drop a like on this video right now, because this incredibly helps me out. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet, so that you never miss any new video that I drop right here on the channel. Now, let's move on to the third video, which is titled Everything for Science. At the very beginning of the video, we are introduced to an entirely new organization. This is a specialized security organization that focuses heavily on anomalies or strange abnormal creatures. This organization is commonly known by the abbreviation CNC. This new organization began to actively collaborate and partner with the CICA organization on the Gateway project to fully explore the newly discovered parallel dimension. We learn that highly confidential and classified information is being displayed regarding a completely new creature other than Dexter that was recently discovered inside the new dimension. We also learn that this newly discovered creature has not been captured or brought under control yet. Following this, several images of this new creature are displayed on the screen, and it has been officially named Subject 32A. However, we are just going to call it Bone. Bone stands at a massive height of approximately 7 meters tall, and its scent closely resembles the smell of completely rotten meat. Unlike the situation with Dexter, the organization openly admits that this creature is considered highly dangerous, even though they still know nothing about it. After that, we step back in time to the exact same moment when the gateway was first opened and when the researcher Valentin first encountered Dexter. We see Dexter standing on the other side of the gateway, staring directly in Valentin's direction. However, we see that Dexter was visualizing and seeing Valentin as nothing more than a piece of food. Right after that, we see Dexter actively hunting and chasing Valentin down. Then we see exactly what happened to the researcher Valentin after he entered the gateway. What we understand from what we just witnessed is that Dexter was actively hunting down his prey. But Dexter could easily smell his scent, and based on that, he could pinpoint his exact location with absolute precision. This made it entirely impossible for Valentin to hide in any place away from Dexter, because Dexter would always find him due to smelling his scent. We also know that Valentin tried to run away, but Dexter was far faster than him. This clearly means that after this scene, Dexter successfully caught Valentin and completely tore his body apart, just as we witnessed in the video. However, it is glaringly obvious that Dexter caught Valentin after Valentin had entered through the gateway, because the organization in the official report we saw in the previous video strictly confirmed that Valentin had indeed successfully entered the gateway. This means that Valentin entered through the portal, and immediately after that, Dexter entered right behind him, and that is when Dexter caught Valentin inside that parallel dimension. There, Valentin fully faced his agonizing and painful fate at the hands of Dexter. Returning back to the events of the third video, we see a new report being filed by one of the researchers within the CICA organization. We learn from his words that he was a close personal friend of the researcher Valentin, whose life ended painfully at the hands of Dexter. We also learn from his words that the organization itself was the one that deliberately sent Valentin into the new dimension. This completely confirms that everything that happened to Valentin was fully planned and orchestrated by the organization from the very start. They were the ones who forced him to enter through the gateway, treating him exactly like a lab rat that they decided to sacrifice under the excuse of science. Immediately after Valentin entered the gateway, Dexter went in right after him, which means that Dexter has currently returned back to his original dimension and is now completely inside the gateway. Anyway, it is also highly obvious from the words of this researcher that he was deeply saddened and grieving over his poor friend Valentin, who was fully sacrificed under the pretext of scientific advancement. Right after that, we see a report issued by Organization C, and we learn that a team from Organization C decided to enter the fake dimension to search for Valentin. However, they naturally had absolutely no idea that Valentin's life had already been completely ended by Dexter. Immediately after this, we see Team C successfully entering through the gateway portal. It turns out that they found Valentin's remains and corpse very close to the gateway entrance, but it was in a highly terrible condition. This means that Valentin did not go very deep into the new dimension at all, because Dexter finished him off almost immediately. After Team C discovered exactly what had happened to Valentin, they successfully captured the new creature named Bone. Currently, Bone is actively studied by the scientists of both the CICA organization and Organization C. Indeed, in the very next scene, we see Bone completely bound and tied with heavy-duty adhesive tape to one of the walls. I have absolutely no idea how a simple piece of tape is supposed to prevent him from escaping, especially since they explicitly stated that he was highly dangerous. Anyway, while the scientists were actively studying Bone, they suddenly begin to hear a loud emergency alarm blaring through the facility. They completely failed to understand where this alarm sound was coming from at first. However, it becomes clear immediately afterward that Dexter has successfully broken out of the gateway once again. After he had returned back to his original dimension, he exited the fake dimension and broke through into the real dimension belonging to humans. What exactly Dexter is going to do when he breaks out into the human dimension is precisely what we are going to discover in the fourth and final video, which is titled The Lost Unit. The video begins with this specific scene, which displays the decaying remains of Valentin's corpse lying on the ground inside the fake dimension. We see that the remains have completely decomposed, but at the very same time, they are moving as if they are completely alive. After that, we transition to a television screen broadcasting a musical concert, but suddenly, the broadcast is violently cut off. An emergency broadcast system alert is displayed on the screen, officially announcing the imposition of a strict curfew in certain areas under the pretext of the presence of an extremist religious cult of devil worshippers who are widespread in the streets, performing bizarre rituals and posing a direct threat to the residents of the area. The emergency broadcast system completely bans all people from leaving their homes for any reason whatsoever, and it strictly orders everyone not to operate or turn on any radio or television sets. It commands the residents to entirely ignore any strange sounds they might hear, warning that anyone who fails to execute these orders will be fully subjected to punishment. And the warning statement ends right there. Following this, we transition to a recorded telephone conversation taking place between a person named Dr. Dozna, who is the executive director of the CICA organization, and another individual named Hector, who works as a monitoring supervisor within the organization. We learn from this specific phone call that Dexter was actively under close surveillance right before he managed to escape. This means it is highly possible that he had been successfully captured after exiting the gateway, but subsequently subsequently managed to escape from the facility after that. Because of this critical situation, the organization was completely forced to broadcast the emergency warning statement and announcement that we just witnessed a moment ago, which imposes a strict curfew. Of course, this warning announcement was entirely a lie, because the curfew that the organization forced upon the citizens was not due to the presence of an extremist religious cult of devil worshippers spreading through the streets at all, but rather because of Dexter's escape from the facility, as he is currently roaming completely free in the area. The organization naturally lied so that absolutely no one would find out that they were the ones responsible for bringing a highly dangerous creature like Dexter into our world, because discovering this truth would undeniably cause the complete destruction of the organization. Currently, the organization plans to fully exploit this curfew period to capture Dexter before anyone else discovers his actual existence. Right after that, the camera shifts to a young man named Gabriel. It is completely obvious that he failed to commit to the curfew and decided to go outside, simply because he possessed an intense curiosity to see and document exactly what was happening during the curfew hours. We also learn from his words that he completely disbelieves the narrative regarding the devil-worshipping cult being the reason behind imposing the strict curfew, and he is currently heading directly towards the woods to try and discover the true reality. However, this is obviously not going to be a good idea at all. In the very next scene, Gabriel enters the woods and ventures deeper into them, and the environment appears completely calm and quiet at first. But suddenly he hears a strange noise coming from right behind him, and when he turns around to look, this is exactly what he encounters. Gabriel comes face to face with Dexter, and naturally, the very second he sees Dexter, he runs away, but it is entirely useless. Following this, we witness a brand new report issued by the organization, and we learn that the organization has finally located and found Dexter. They discover that there are clear traces of blood present across his face and his limbs, and they also locate the remains of Gabriel's corpse next to him, after Dexter completely ended his life and fed on him. However, he did not entirely consume him, but instead left behind significant bodily remains, exactly like what happened previously with Valentin. The organization firmly believes that Dexter leaves these bodily remains behind deliberately for a specific reason, but they are completely unable to figure out exactly what that underlying reason is. Following this, the organization recovered Gabriel's remains and brought them back to the organization's headquarters to fully analyze them, trying to comprehend exactly why Dexter behaves this way. As for Dexter himself, the organization successfully captured him and secured him inside a specialized containment capsule belonging to Organization C. This time, Dexter was finally officially classified as a highly dangerous entity. After that, the report shifts to talk about Bone, who is still strictly under close monitoring and continuous study. We learn that unlike Dexter, Bone has never attempted to escape the facility at all, but he experiences severe agitation and loses consciousness from time to time. Next, we return back to Dexter, whose guarding and monitoring setup has been completely upgraded and reinforced far more than before. They are going to continuously conduct experiments on him, studying his behavioral patterns even deeper, and testing his ability to interact through gestures and through actual speech. Following this, we see Dr. Dozna, the director of the CICA organization, asking about Dexter's current condition. Dr. Dozna decides to personally attempt to communicate and speak with Dexter himself. And this is the actual conversation that took place between Dexter and Dr. Dozna. Hello. You do not sound like hello. You do not sound like hello. 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 And the video ends right there. Now, let's quickly organize and piece the events together to make absolutely sure that we haven't missed a single detail. Everything began when the CICA organization decided to open a gateway portal to an entirely random, undiscovered parallel dimension. The very first thing they saw inside this dimension was a hybrid creature shaped like a cross between a human and a dog, which is widely known by the name Dexter. The moment Dexter saw humans, he immediately realized that they were the source of food, and for that exact reason, he broke out of the gateway because he was feeling intense hunger. He began to actively hunt, tear apart and kill the researchers who were working on the project inside the laboratory. All of this took place with the full knowledge of the organization, which viewed all of these human sacrifices as completely necessary for the sake of scientific advancement. Furthermore, they intentionally decided to lock the absolute single survivor inside the laboratory, who was Valentin Gonzalez, forcing him to transition into the new dimension. By completely deceiving him, they forced him to step through the gateway, which represented the absolute only available exit route to flee from Dexter. And indeed, Valentin entered through the gateway, but the very second he stepped inside, Dexter caught him and immediately ended his life. However, he did not consume him completely because Valentin's remains stayed there, and after a while, Valentin's remains shockingly began to transform into something else entirely. A creature that seemed alive because it was moving, though it isn't completely clear what this object is exactly. However, if we go to the video on the creator's channel titled The Flower Girl, a locked box will appear in that video with the words Experiment 0001 written on it. While the information I'm about to tell you right now is not completely verified, I firmly believe that this object is directly related to what we saw happening to Valentin's remains. Anyway, after that, the organization captured Bone, who was described as a highly dangerous creature, though we still don't know much data about him. Right after that, Dexter escaped from the organization and caused a brand new casualty, the young man named Gabriel, before the organization successfully captured Dexter and returned him to the containment capsule once again. In the final scene of the last video, we witness rapid random footage displaying Bone, Valentin's remains, and a young girl. This girl never officially appeared throughout the core series, but she appeared in one of the standalone videos on the creator's channel. That specific video was titled Maggie's Strange Dog, and a dog that looks exactly like Dexter appears in that video, playing with this girl, whose name is clearly Maggie, just as written in the title. Thus, we now know that the girl who appeared in that rapid shot is Maggie herself, and just as we witnessed in that video, Dexter is actually her personal dog, which leads me to firmly believe that Maggie herself might be Experiment 0001, and Dexter is merely a follower or a servant to her. The bodily remains that Dexter constantly leaves behind might actually be literal sacrifices or offerings, just as the organization itself described them. Of course, Dexter presents these sacrifices to the mysterious, unknown entity known as Experiment 0001, which could highly be directly connected to Maggie. But these are merely theories and are not fully confirmed up to this point. We will wait until a new episode of the series drops. And right now, let's learn the underlying reason why this creature that appeared in the series was named Dexter. The dog that appeared in this series is heavily inspired by a real-life dog named Dexter, who was obviously not a monster or strange creature at all, but was a completely normal dog. However, he was involved in a severe accident that resulted in losing one of his 4 legs. Yet the dog fully adapted to the situation and began to walk completely on his hind legs, exactly like a human being. The creator of the series fully inspired Dexter's character from this real dog, because he is a dog that walks on his 2 legs just like a human being. And that was the full explanation and analysis of the analog horror series, Dexter the Dog. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet.